With 16 years of experience as a full professor, he has made remarkable contributions to academia, authoring and editing 30 books and numerous research papers across multiple languages, including Sanskrit, Pali, Hindi, Telugu, and English. His scholarly achievements have been recognized with several awards and certificate of honor. Beyond his academic contributions in India, Professor Rao has also represented Indian scholarship internationally, serving as a visiting professor in Cambodia under the ICCRS chair. Today, as the chairperson of this session, he will be guiding our discussions and introducing our esteemed speakers. With his vast expertise and insights, we are certain this session will be both enriching and engaging. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Upendra.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm very happy to join in this session, and also very happy to join in this international conference, Reimagining the Reclaiming the Knowledge Traditions of Bharat. So, I think in inaugural session, all of you are present. You know the concept and how Indian knowledge traditions are now being discussed widely. Without wasting much time, because already we have spent some time before beginning of this session, I invite speakers who came from different parts of this world. I saw from Germany, USA, Poland, Sri Lanka, and also India, Noida. We have 5 speakers, and each speaker will be given 20 minutes. Unfortunately, this is a situation in conferences. 20 minutes are not enough at all, but we had to conclude in 20 minutes. Let me first invite Professor Renate Syed. Is it correct?
Yes.
So she's from Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich, Germany. She will present her views on the Jain concept of nonviolence and solidarity with all living beings, a universal philosophy. I'm just in the morning, I came from other conference, which is in the National University of Sanskrit, that was on the Jain philosophy only. I was also invited there. In Jain philosophy, Acharya Kundakunda is very important personality. Kundakunda wrote Samaya-sara, and all his canonical works are in Prakrit language, that is Shauraseni Prakrit. Jain concept of non-violence is very, very, very fascinating, because as per my personal opinion, many people speak about the non-violence, but the Jains are actually followed non-violence in its, not only just speaking, all followed completely in a true sense non-violence, and also even now they are following their way of life, and also food habits also. Jains are not non-vegetarians also, even today. So in this way, Jain concept of non-violence is very famous, even though we say that we often quote that ahimsa paramo dharma is from Mahabharata, but Jain concept is much more higher than these things. And recently we convened one workshop with the German collaboration, and again in March I will be doing one more workshop on Buddhist field, Sanskrit literature. So we also invited one participant from Munich earlier last year, and now I'm very happy to invite Professor to begin your paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to India. And as you already said, I'm teaching Indology in the Munich University and in Hochschule für Philosophie. The tradition of Indology is long in India. In Germany, we have Indology since about 200 years. And while Buddhism and Hinduism are quite well received and known, nobody in Germany out of academia knows anything about Jainism. So I studied with my students in one semester on Jainism, and please can you give the next, no, this is wrong, I'm sorry. This is wrong. I'm sorry, now there's a confusion with the presentation. This is the paper, I need a presentation. Anyhow, as long as you do not find the presentation, I will speak on this like I can. Actually, in the 2nd century AD, there was a Jain philosopher, Acharya Umaswati, who was a born Brahmin, as they say. They date him in the 2nd century of the Common Era. And he became a Digambara monk, and he was the first who wrote a treatise on Jainism in Sanskrit. Up to then, all Jainist scriptures were written, as you know, in Ardha Magadhi. So he published a treatise, he wrote a treatise which is called Tattva Artha Sutra. Tattva Artha Sutra was the first treatise in Sanskrit on Jainism. So actually I had a beautiful presentation. This is the paper which is useless here. So in this text, Tattva Artha Sutra, he had a saying. This is called Paraspara Upagraha Jivanam, which is then called Parasparopagrahu Jivanam. And this means that all beings are connected in the world, interdependently, Paraspara Upagraha Jivanam. So in his Tattva Artha Sutra, he gives the list of the, yes, thank you so much, that's it. So it is called Paraspara Upagraha Jivanam. Can you proceed please with the slides? Yeah, this is Acharya Umaswati. And as I would say, please go on. You just go on as I'm speaking. For me, it is one of the most sublime concepts of Indian philosophy, indeed of all philosophy. I consider it as a perennial philosophy. His philosophy is ahimsa, not violence in thought, word, and action, and this was already dealt with in the Upanishads. Already in Chandogya, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, you can find the concept of ahimsa, but this Umaswati enlarged it a lot. So this ethic is stricter and wider than any European ethic on animals. While ahimsa is an ancient Indian Hindu doctrine already spoken of in the Upanishads, the Paraspara Upagraha Jivanam is a motto of Jainism. Please go on, based on ahimsa. You all might know this, Paraspara Upagraha Jivanam. Yeah, please proceed. So, it is a Sanskrit aphorism from the Jain text Tattva Artha Sutra, which I call TS only, and it is composed about the 2nd century of the Common Era by Acharya Umaswati. So how can we translate it? We translate it as service, help, solidarity, upagraha, is rendered to each other, paraspara, by all living beings with a soul. And all living beings with a soul are called jiva. And every little animal, an ant, a cockroach, is a jiva. So whatever is living is jiva. And you can also translate it, all living beings are connected by mutual support, solidarity, interdependence. So upagraha means mutual interspecies support in the sense that jivas, these are man, animal, and plants even in the Jain doctrine, depend on each other as companions and fellow sufferers in the karmic cycle which is called samsara. Please go on. And we should not harm but support each other. All living beings, jiva, according to the Tattva Artha Sutra, share the same experiences of joy, sukha, suffering, dukkha, jivita, living, and dying, which is marana. And whoever has this is a jiva, and you should not harm it. You should not harm it. That's the point. All living beings, jiva, share the ability of cognition, but in a different intensity, of course. And they have conscious upayoga, and they have senses, indriyani. So when we had our lunch today, the dogs, they are coming and looking and smelling because they have, as we have, indriyani, senses. So humans, we have the greatest responsibility. Why? The animals have no responsibility because they don't have the mental understanding what is good and bad. They just act according to their being, svabhava. But we humans have the important responsibility because we can decide what is good and what is bad. Please go on. Thank you. So this is what the Jainas say on a Jaina website, meaning of Paraspara Upagraha Jivanam. And this is including microorganism life in earth, water, air, fire, plants, and so on. Please go on. This is the Tattva Artha Sutra I'm working with. And here is a very important book on Umaswati and his philosophy. I based the lecture with my students. He translated the Tattva Artha Sutra on this passage. Yeah, please go on. Yeah. So to the Tattva Artha Sutra is also called the Tattva Artha Adhigamana Sutra, and it deals with a reality, with Artha. And it's also called a treatise on understanding what Jainism is, so it is called Tattva Adhigama Sutra. Yeah, please go on. Yeah, the next. Yeah. So, what is important according to Umaswati? The right face, this is Samyak Darshana, the right knowledge, yes. Samyak Jnana, I should understand it. I should read it, I should understand, and then, of course, I have to realize it. And this is a Samyak Charitra. And this, if you follow this, then you are up on the Moksha Marga, on the way to enlightenment and liberation. So having studied and understood the Jain philosophy, which everybody can, I can point it, okay. No, this is not so necessary. Thank you. No, it's just confusing me. So everybody can understand. So then we have to transform it into real knowledge which sinks down to us, and then we have to act. And then we become a so-called samyak drishti, a person who understands. This leads to understanding and subjugation of the passions, because why do people not act according to Jaina philosophy? Because there is in us kashaya, which means emotions, passions. We want to kill a spider. We want to mistreat people sometimes. So then the jiva, if you transform and subjugate your passions, then the jiva casts off the burden of karma, and this is going to moksha directly. Destroying moha is a way to realize ahimsa. In the same way, ahimsa, active ahimsa, minimizes moha. So if I really act according to ahimsa, moha is going off. So there was a teacher of Umaswati, that was Acharya Kunda Kunda, and he distinguished between, Umaswati in the 2nd century and this Kunda Kunda already earlier. So let's say at the time of Jesus Christ in Palestine, this Acharya Kunda already formulated his ideas on knowledge. So the common man has only Vyavaharana that is based on personal delusion. People act wrong because they don't have, according to Kunda, the right knowledge, which is Nishchayanaya, and this is pure, and this is the real way of understanding. This you gain from reading the scriptures or from listening to the teachers. Please, the next. Yeah, this is Acharya Kunda. Shri Kunda Acharya ji, yes please. This is his book, Nyansara. Please go on. Yeah. And now the Tattva Artha Sutra was the first text on Jain philosophy in Sanskrit. Earlier texts were written, as I told you already, in Ada Magadhi. And the Gambaras as well as Shvetambara traditions accept this text. Please go on. Yeah. So these are the tattvas, the realities. You can break down world to these 7 realities. Everything else is unimportant. So this is living and unliving beings, and then the influx of karma, the bondage of the jiva, of the soul by karma, and so on. And then you can gradually dissociate the karma and you will get moksha. Please go on. Yeah. And sometimes, these other elements in Jainism are papa, which is bad doing, and punya, which is good doing. Please. Next. Yeah. Good. Now, what is very fascinating, I'm German, I come from the European tradition, and what is fascinating for me in Jainism is that the idea of a creator and a judging God in the sense of the Abrahamic religion, Judaism, Christianity and Islam is absent in Jainism. I wouldn't call it a religion, it's a philosophy. And above all, it's a logic philosophy. And a person is not punished by God as in Judaism or in Islam. Persons punish themselves by doing wrong and reaping bad karma, pala. This is called pala. And so for me, Jainism is a rational and logic philosophy based on autonomy and self-determination. In an act of Aishwarya, of making myself powerful, I can understand it. So here in Jainism, and this is the charming thing, the individual is free, completely free. It has a brain. It can use the brain. It can understand. It can learn, and it can act. I'm not dependent on a God who might save me or not. So Jainism is a free. It's a philosophy of freedom. So because all living beings, yes, go on. Thank you so much. Yeah. I told you this is already what I told you. We have the Samyak Darshana. We have the Samyak Jnana. And now here is the breaking point. Many persons who learn about Jainism, they say, no, I can't do that. It's too I would call it abstract, and it's too rigorous, So this is the point, where most people get out. So, and then, if you understand, as I told before, you have to transform it then into right acting. Please go on with the next. Yeah. Here you see the principles which also were explained by Umaswati. You see Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, and Aparigraha. And Aparigraha means not embracing the world. So you let go. Less is more. Please, the next. Yeah. And what is, I'm sorry, Devanagari was transformed into something else. So what is himsa? What is harming? Harming is when you disturb the life energy of any animal. And I say any animal. Not this yes and this not. No, any animal, any being which has a jiva. Please, the next. Go to the next, please. Yeah. So how should we act? How should we live? And I love Umaswati's Tattva Artha Sutra because he gives us a plan how we should live. We should have Maitri, which is benevolence toward all living beings. We should feel joy for the good people. We should have empathy for the unhappy people. And we should have, and this is very important, tolerance and neutrality towards the ill-behaving people. The word Madhyastha, means standing in the middle. So I'm not judging people. Be neutral. If somebody is behaving wrong, it's his or her problem. You should not interfere. Madhyastha. Please, the next. Yeah. So mildness, Madhava, is a major component of ahimsa, and it's also, as Umaswati says, innate in us. We are not bad persons. We have Madhava, mildness, but we have to also cultivate it. So Acharya Pudyapada, who wrote an important commentary on the Tattva Artha Sutra, said, being mild or gentle is mrituta. And it comes, if you are a real human, it comes out of you. So what he says is actually, even I, born in Germany, in a very cruel and brutal environment, where animals are killed without any afterthought, I can understand this is not okay. And even born in Germany, I can sympathize with Jainism. And I can understand, and I have to do nothing. I have not to convert. I just take it as a way of living in my life. Nobody is controlling it. That's freedom. That's Jainism. So, and everybody can see that the world, please the next one, because everybody can well observe that injury and violence will produce calamity and reproach, and it will further add to suffering in the world. Life is suffering, and if we are brutal, we add to more suffering. So why should we do it? Just leave it. Yes, please. Okay, and we should have now Acharya Pudyapada was giving an extant commentary on Umaswati's Tattva Artha Sutra, and he said, what means anukampa? I have stressed it here. It means that we can understand that the suffering of another person is my suffering. I can identify with a being that suffers. This is anukampa. And compassion is toward all living beings in general. This is very important to keep in mind, and what Germans can hardly understand. It means, Acharya Pudyapada says, compassion is towards all living beings, yeah? And so then we get Shanti, and by this we control Krodha, Mana, Maya, and Lobha. Please the next. And this is how the world is. Because nobody follows Jainism, only some 4 million. We have all this is the world as it is now today. It's a pool of sharks. We have wars, we have violence, we kill easily, we kill mosquitoes with a spray. And what are we eating? Look this. Next. Yeah. So therefore, according to the Tattva Artha Sutra, we should practice bhukti. This is self-observance and self-control. And we can, Jainism lies great emphasis on the avoidance of letting you go. No, be always aware and practice bhukti. Next, please. I'm doing quickly because my time is limited. Now, what is to say? Remarkable is the statement, compassion is towards all living beings in general, and this includes even the smallest beings, which is called in Sanskrit krimi. You know krimi? Krimi is a worm, a little worm. And this is much more important than any Western ethical concepts. And this is what I want to stress. And because in Germany, it is no problem at all to kill little animals, even without an afterthought. And this is the difference between this Western brutality somehow and the thinking of the Jains. For me, as a German, it seems that in Western cultures, animals are cared for only if they are exploitable, if they are edible, if you can eat them, if they are usable or lovable. But love often is a form of use. If you keep cats and dogs, or if you keep a bird in a cage, what are you doing with this animal? You're keeping it for your sake. Does the little bird want to sit in a cage? No, definitely not. Next, please. Yeah. So in the West, we have evident contradictions. Look, this is Sam. Everybody who knows him loves him. Can you eat him? Last 5 minutes, thank you. Can you eat him? No. Will you eat her? Number 7018, of course. Germans eat beef like mad. So what is the difference? Tell me. In Jainism, there is no difference. How can you love him and kill her? Look. And this is a cognitive dissonance. I would say, and this is traditional, established, and upheld in Western ethics. So forget about this. It's the Indian ethics, it's the Jain ethic with its logic. Next. Yes, I keep on time. So here, difference in Jainism is gradual, not categorical. Yeah? So these all are beings, jivas, but of course, they have different kinds of cognitive possibilities and abilities. Next, please. Yeah, so there's no difference. Yeah, go on. Yeah, okay, leave this because it would be too much, so this look. Acharya Pujyapada says, live in a manner that causes no hindrance to others. And who are the others? This is the other. Please never kill a spider anymore. It's a beautiful animal which is weaving wonderful nets. And she remembers. Next. Yeah. So in the presence of a person faithfully practicing ahimsa, the hostility somehow ends. This is also stated in the Yoga Sutra. I'm coming to an end. Let us, next, we will go over some of this is too much, yes? So what can be done? What can be done? I want to cite Michael Fox. Because Michael Fox, here from the Humane Society in the United States, says the following. And I think this is my opinion too. Human survival and the well-being of the animal and plant kingdoms now more urgently than ever depend upon us all embracing the Jain religion's principle of ahimsa. I'm doubtful. The world will not do it. But Fox is right. If more people would live in a Jain way, the world would be a better place. Rather, we should draw a circle, a boundless circle of compassion to include all creatures and creation within the scope of our respect and reverence. By doing so, the significance of our own lives is enriched and our own spiritual development enhanced. Just to go on one, I just remember on Mahatma Gandhi who said, ahimsa is the highest duty. He actually says ahimsa paramo dharma, as the Hindus say. Even if we cannot practice it in full, we must try to understand its spirit and refrain as far as is human possible from violence. And now comes the last. Yeah, look this. I found this in the internet, the beauty of Sanatana Dharma. And the next is the last one, I think. Yeah, this is next. Okay, this is it. Go back. But this is not important. Yeah. So what I wanted to say is, that in Germany these principles of Jainism are considered impossible to realize. But I do not think they are impossible to realize. As Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi said, we can start a little and go further. And we can become more and more living in ahimsa, and it is much rewarding, I tell you. I was born a meat eater. Today, by heart, I'm a Jain. Even if I'm not. I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Renate Syed. Your name is Syed, means in Jainism there is a Syadvada. Your name also is like that, Syad. So, very interesting paper, and but I have naturally in such thing many thoughts and many feelings come, but we don't have much time. But one thing is, you said that Jainism is not a religion, so that is true. We can understand that. In that case, even Buddhism is not religion, even Hinduism is not religion. That is one aspect of understanding this way of life, you can say. Hinduism also is a way of life. It is not religion. Also, Buddhism also way of life, Jainism also, but they are also religions. We cannot say that they are not religions, because when they say that paraspara upagraho jivanam, this is very much important point in religion also, like that. And second thing is just is very painstaking question, and also much discussed also. I always think that also you may be also thinking that when we speak about the non-violence, what about the non-vegetarianism? What is in German? I think in Germany, I think extreme non-vegetarians. Because the candidate who came from Germany recently, she was telling that we don't get, everybody is eating so much meat there. Here I like vegetables, she was at the time of lunch, she was telling. So, that also is a very perplexing question. I think better to not start discussion in this, but I am asking your personal opinion. Do you think that non-vegetarian which is prevailed in the world, do you say that these food habits should be considered differently, or should we see it violence and non-violence? In my opinion, it is a violence only because we are extremely vegetarians. Also, we cannot imagine taking non-vegetarian. But because you are from Germany, I am asking your personal opinion, which may not be accepted by, because this is a very complicated question, because there are so many non-vegetarians, they don't accept this. But I am just asking a personal opinion. Non-vegetarian, many people say, I also sometimes think that this food habits should not be connected to this ethics ultimately. That's what actually I think. Because there are so much non-vegetarianism increase in the world, everywhere. I was a visiting professor in Cambodia, and it was very difficult for me to live there. Not easy to get vegetarian food there. I used to cook myself. So, this is a big question, but I am just asking because you are also thinking like me, or you have other opinions that
I think according to Jainism, you should not impose this philosophy on others. So this is a form of mental violence. If people are not ready to understand, you must let them be as they are. I can't actually answer the question. I just can say the world is full of violence and brutality and wars. And the world is full of meat eaters. Is there a connection? Might be, because I cannot remember ever having heard that the Jainas started the war.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know.
But the thing is, when we take non-vegetarian, how it is possible without killing animals?
You become more and more sensitive. And you start having feelings for little beings. If you're born in Germany, you are educated. You know this is nothing. This is just dirt, pests, vermin. Just kill it. But suddenly you get another look on it. If you
You say personal, everything completely personal. Yes. Okay. But we say that Atmavat Sarvabhuteshu Yapashyati Sa Pandita. So, Pandita is that who treats every bhuta, every being like him, like himself. So let us, I think, briefly you can say something, very briefly, because
We are part and parcel of Supreme Court. The soul. The soul is part of that. The soul is eternal, Supreme Court. So we are not clear. Unless we can only call it as a perception, it's not important reason. Then it is very clear. Even I read somewhere, if you eat a meat, that meat of the animal is eating one day.
yeah,
Why people are suffering nowadays?
yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. This is a big discussion, and this we can continue during tea breaks and during dinner and lunchtime, because it is not time here, because it's very big discussion. And now, let us invite next speaker, Professor Sonia Suchday. Is that correct? So Suchday. Oh, Professor Sonia Suchday, Pace University, New York, USA. So I invite her to present her paper on relationship with people and spirit, importance of the social and spiritual in understanding the biopsychological approach to health and well-being in India. Welcome, Madam, Professor Sonia Suchday.
If I could go to the next slide. So let me just begin by thanking JNU and all the organizers of this conference for inviting me. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to start with talking a little bit about globalization, then about the biopsychosocial approach. I don't know what your familiarity with that is. And then I will talk about India, globalization, and the biopsychosocial approach. And then about interpersonal relationships and spirituality, and then interpersonal support and relationships. Research on both those topics that we have done in my lab over the years. So what is globalization? We've heard a lot about globalization in terms of economics, but in reality, globalization is about three components that are entwined with each other, which is people, processes, and products. Processes, we understand ways of doing things. Products, money, material, non-material products that go from one part of the world to the other. And it's about people. It's their lives, it's their worlds, it's the culture, it's the society that shifts as a function of globalization. There is growth and there is challenge, and pretty significant challenge at that. Next slide, please. So globalization also needs to be thought about as neoliberal globalization, with implications for free market economies and whatever disadvantages they bring with it. So globalization as a process is neither neutral nor natural. It has political connotations and it has an aspect of being forced. We are also contending with colonial realities which manifest themselves in the midst of globalization, with capitalism, materialism, removal of rules and regulations, and the advantage that that confers on the strong versus the weak. And we also have to think about individualism and personal responsibility versus societal and systemic aspects of globalization. Next slide, please. I'm going to switch gears and go into health. The World Health Organization definition of health is that it is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So I'm going to point out to the physical, mental, and social. Clearly, there is acknowledgement that health is not simple. It is not just about not having a major disease. The biopsychosocial approach derives from that concept, where we focus in terms of health on biology, genetics. Physically, something is wrong with you, it's the physiology. Psychological aspects, how are you thinking, how are you feeling, where are you at, do you feel okay? And finally, the social. Do you have people around you? Is your world complete in various ways that it needs to be? However, when we look at perspectives on health from different parts of the world, I've put up there indigenous people of Australia. They think about health as health does not mean the physical well-being of the individual, but refers to the social, emotional, spiritual, cultural well-being of the whole community. This is a whole of life view and includes the cyclical concept of life and death. In Buddhism, health is about no illness in body and no stress in mind. Physical pain and illness is an opportunity to cultivate healthy and desirable mental states. And finally, it's not illness, but your response to the illness that actually causes you to be sick. Clearly, the biopsychosocial approach does not necessarily encompass those points. So globalization and the biopsychosocial approach. I love the term colonization because I think it makes a very strong point. Globalization implies urbanization. We've all got remote controls in our hands right now. We don't even bother getting up to change the channel. Public transportation, we sit on our laptops all day long, and fast food. You know, all we've got to do is make a phone call and everything is at your doorstep. There are many, many challenges associated with globalization. Inequity, we saw that during the pandemic, what was happening to wealthy countries versus poor countries. Work overload, violence, social disparities, consumer culture with material versus non-material values. There are also changes. These are the lesser known aspects of globalization, which only a social scientist studying globalization is going to look at, and that is changes in traditional social structures. With globalization, as young people move away, families, neighbors, friends, community structures start shifting. We've never paid attention to it. And traditional coping patterns change. If you have a large family, some of your problems are taken care of right within the family. How many of you have heard the term, "Ghar ki baat ghar mein hi rehni chahiye"? What happens if you're far away from home? Where is the question of ghar ki baat? Your coping strategies shift. So biopsychosocial model requires what we think of as a contextual adaptation. And it is adaptation by society. There is shifts in community cohesion. There is structural limits, both physical and social. You know, in other words, society itself is flexing and shifting to adapt to the experience of globalization. Similarly, with individuals, there is a rise in communicable and non-communicable disease. Clearly, non-communicable disease, COVID has shown us. Sorry, please, next slide. Oh boy, keep going. Next. Sorry. Okay. So communicable and non-communicable disease have increased. Next slide, please. Biopsychosocial model in South Asian cultures. The emphasis differs. In other words, it is the same biopsychosocial model, but the focus is on the social versus the biological and the psychological. And the second part of it is that there is a fusion of the psychological and social. In other words, even your identity is interpersonally construed. You are somebody's daughter, you are somebody's wife, you are somebody's mother, rather than, if you're asked the question, who am I? A lot of times within South Asian cultures, the answer will be much more in the context of your relationships rather than the individual. So there is a merger of the social and the psychological. The emphasis on well-being may differ. Hedonia, which is the experience of positive emotional states and satisfaction of desires, is an aspect of happiness. And eudaimonia, which is the presence of meaning and development of potential. Again, East and West differ in terms of where the emphasis is. Both are equally important, but there is a shift in emphasis going from one culture to another. India has, thank you. India has always been globalized with multifaceted and porous borders through invasion, colonization, travel, education, trade, spices, and more recently, spiritual and religious discourse. Actually, not more recently. Spiritual and religious discourse have always been porous, from going from India to the outer world and from the world to India. India is a global power in many ways today, but importantly, it remains a traditional country with a history that spans several thousand years. It's diverse. It's also experiencing rapid development, enterprise, education, and environment. It is a country of contrasts. It's a modernizing economy where village production continues to dominate. It's a nuclear power, which is the birthplace of nonviolence protest. Inequity is present in India, as the benefits of globalization are experienced differentially between urban and rural areas, between wealthy and the not so wealthy. The perspective of health in India has been one health, which includes animals, human disease, environment, and all of the world around you. So it's internal versus externally focused. That's always been the Indian concept of health. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about Indian psychology. You might ask, what is that? Indian psychology is a very deliberate attempt by psychologists in India in the early 60s and 70s to very deliberately remove the field from its colonial realities. As you're aware, the formal system of education in India was developed by the British, and as such, psychology developed along Western lines. And psychologists felt that those concepts were not relevant to India. It's not that India didn't have its own theory of mind, its own understanding of people and their functioning. So Indian psychology is a very deliberate and actually a very impressive attempt by Indian psychologists starting in the 60s and 70s. In fact, there is a very impressive array of literature now that explains Indian psychology, which has actually been a trademark of what we think of as the global South. Indian psychology reconceptualizes the biopsychosocial model as the biopsychosocial spiritual model, saying the spiritual is just as important as any other aspect of it. And it represents the ecological, physical, social evolution of mind, society, and nature over several millennia. The social and spiritual are embedded in the written texts and customs of the country. So any psychology in India that does not take into account the spiritual and the social might almost be meaningless. This is my own theorizing. They didn't say that. I agree. Our traditional systems and knowledge were obscured by the Western concept of science and education. Recently, there is a reintegration of traditional knowledge and systems. This conference is a very sterling example of that effort. Globalization in India then represents resilience and rapid adaptation. Indian psychology is rooted in philosophy and spiritual traditions which focus on internal as well as external experiences in response to the world. There are a slew of spiritual texts like the Vedas, the Upanishads, Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita. The central concept of a lot of these texts is the focus on spiritual growth in addition to material and other kinds of growth. Self-realization, consciousness, nature of mind, and liberation. These are all key concepts to be understood. Approach to health has always been holistic, which, with things like yoga, Ayurveda, contemplative practices, it is about pulling the mind and the body together, which exemplifies the biopsychosocial approach. Indian spirituality emphasizes person, place, and time in understanding any human being. There's also the dualistic mindset, which focuses on Purusha and Prakriti at the same time. Purusha is the eternal, unchanging, transcendental self. The larger concept being that we all have a bit of the universe, a bit of the universal soul in all of us, which is unchanging and transcendental. And Prakriti, which is changing, material and manifest world. In other words, Indian psychology always thinks of people as having a duality. There is that internal and the external. And unlike the West, there is no expectation of complete harmony between the two. In fact, there is distinctly a difference between the two, but the two can exist at the same time. Dharma is a very key concept with values of right and wrong, duty and responsibility, and karma is, of course, well known. We all know about it as action and reaction and universal justice. Important to note that a lot of religions have concepts of karma embedded in them. Christianity talks about do unto others what you want others to do unto you. In our lab, which is called the Heart, Mind, Spirit, and the Globe, we examined lifestyles, happiness, socioeconomic position amongst emergent adolescents, adults, community samples in urban India, Mumbai and New Delhi. Those are the two primary areas where we've collected our data. We look at the biopsychosocial framework, we look at globalization, individual characteristics like anger, forgiveness, empathy, circumstances, socioeconomic status, acculturation, interpersonal relationships, and more recently, spirituality. These are some publications that have come from our lab in the last 5 years. So per our data, I'm going to summarize a little bit of what we found, which is that the components of the Indian lifestyles, again, these were qualitative studies followed by quantitative studies with large sample sizes where we were first asking questions, what is important to you, what is it about life that is important to you, and then going back and doing content analysis and giving questionnaires to assess it. So we found that concepts such as collectivism, religiosity, spirituality, and karma very much dominate the lifestyles. And the less traditional ones are personal agency and materialism. I want to do well. I want to be something. I want to get somewhere. I want to make more money. That is there too. It's a part of modern India now. In terms of elicitors of happiness in India, we came up again, same way, qualitative studies followed by quantitative, spirituality, religion, interpersonal relationships, and achievement. I'm going to pause here. Please go on to the next slide. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to pause here for a moment because achievement is present in our data even in the West. But when we look at achievement in the East, we find concepts like social position and community respect. In addition to finding things like money, career, these are concepts that you will not find in a Western sample. Also, when we do a traditional factor analysis, we throw out the items that load on multiple factors. In this case, I think the two items that loaded on multiple factors were the most important, which was duty and responsibility. They were common across all factors. Give me a second and I'll explain it. So, what our data finds is that in people in India today, the traditional is very important: collectivism, identity, interpersonal values, internal management of anger to preserve the relationship, and happiness is all about personal relationships and spirituality. Next, please. Non-traditional values such as personal agency and achievement, materialism, are also part of the picture. Next, please. What we find is that even though there is more westernization with globalization, there is still a difference. If you ask a young person in the West, why do you want to make more money? The answers will be, I want a new car, I want a beautiful spouse, or a handsome spouse, or whatever it is that they want. I want to look beautiful, I want to be the most important person in the room. With Indian kids, they will frequently turn around and say, I want to make more money because I need to help my parents and I need to take care of them. That embeddedness of the interpersonal is always present. Emphasis on duty and responsibility, I already brought this up. Parents' preferences are very salient when it comes to young people's choices, whether they are career, their marriage, their identity, or their lifestyles. Values and beliefs need to be understood in a cultural context. I'm not going to repeat this. I've gone through this already. Next, please. What's important to note here is that the benefits of globalization are frequently experienced by the wealthy, and they are limited by structural and institutional realities. Okay, there is a lot of limits that our social institutions bring that prevent globalization from having its maximal impact. So what are we going to do with globalization? Can we put it under the carpet? We could try, maybe. Final thoughts. Values, beliefs, practices develop in context, need to be understood in context, and when the context shifts, the way those practices work shift completely. You cannot assume that what works in one place is working for the same reasons and in the same way in a different place. We need to shift even our methodology to understand some of these contextual variables. And with that, I end. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, question answers we can keep in the end. Thank you, Professor Sonia. You have touched so many things, particularly many things under your topic, biopsychosocial approach. So there are so many things. When you say about India, Indian way of life, Indian culture, Indian philosophy, there are so many things. We generally say, in 18 Puranas, Vyasa said only two things. If you do harm to others, you will get sin. If you do help to others, if you help others, you will get merit. So like that we have plenty of things about Indian culture. It's not easy to interpret and talk about Indian culture in a nutshell. Ashtadasha Puraneshu Vyasasya Vachanadvayam Paropakara Punyaya Papaya Parapya. And if you say what is the motivation of India, that is written on the parliament. Ayam Nijah Paroveti Ganana Laghuchetasam Udara Charitanantu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So this is the motivation of India. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole globe is one family. That was spread by everywhere you can find. We often say that there is no singular number in Vedic literature. Everywhere there is a plural number. We it says. I never say like this. So that is one thing. And you also said that the dualistic approach, somewhere you mentioned Prakriti Purusha, that is very philosophical actually. The entire Sankhya philosophy is based on that. Dualistic nature, you said, simply you said, but this dualistic nature realizing is the aim of the Sankhya. It is not easy. It is not easy. You see, Sankhya says that we are different and Prakriti is different. That is what you should read. That is what Prakriti Purusha Viveka Jnana. It is very difficult. It is very easy, and also it's a marvelous philosophy. If we understand this, we can get rid of all these problems. And also, Indian culture was very, very deep, and it is like it is very coded and like magnet, and it is very difficult to explain. That if you see the scriptures and the way they prepared everything, you will understand. But that slowly, in course of time, I think we lost that depths of the culture. I think now people in India are not much aware of their own culture. To be very frankly, just by praising and quoting again and again, it does not work. You should really understand. You should just praising the nation again and again, without understanding the nation, also cannot help. Recently, just 1 minute, 1 second, not 1 minute. Recently, I wrote you a poem in Sanskrit. I was remembering everything, you see, when she was reading our paper, Videsha Gaman. You see, every Indians now, we are going and abroad, particularly, USA mainly USA, and earning money and doing good jobs. And this actually started a kind of thinking in me, and I wrote a small poem, Videsha Gamana. Why Indians are going to foreign countries. So many things are described. The defects, greatness of our country, also defects of the country. Both are there. Greatness is there, but in presentation, in following those principles, we have to follow very seriously. Otherwise, just by saying, praising cannot work. So whereas you can find a very systematic way of life in other countries, so system and principles are there. There are punishments also. Here we don't have many punishments, strong punishments. Punishment should be there. Level should increase. Only then I think we can do more. So all these things are very interesting, and it is not easy to say briefly, but your paper has is thought-provoking. Thank you very much for that. And now I invite Dr. Filip Rucinski. Yeah.
I think, madam, you made a global forward. Your talk is talking about the importance of India and abroad. Thanks for promoting the Indian culture in the digital world.
Okay, what you said?
The paper deals about the Indian approach and importance of India and abroad. That's what whole paper is about.
Yeah. Yes. So I think Dr. Filip will present later, and now I invite Dr. KVJ Koshali from University of Ruhuna, Sri Lanka. Is there? Okay. And she will speak on Buddhism and the past, and Oriental perspective for understanding archaeological thought in India and Sri Lanka. It's very interesting. Recently, I was in Sri Lanka, and I teach Buddhism in Jain, Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist literature, and very interesting. Buddhism again, one of the very important knowledge systems of ancient India. So I welcome Dr. K. Vijay.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. Best wishes from Sri Lanka, Ayuban. And as you can see on the slide, I'm casually attached to the Department of History and Archaeology at the University of Rubin, Sri Lanka. So my background is archaeology. That means I am currently an archaeologist. So this will be based on archaeological perspective. So in this study, I explore Buddhist conceptions of the past as an alternative approach to archaeological thought in India and Sri Lanka. I critically examine the Eurocentric biases that have shaped archaeological historiography, often marginalizing local perspectives on non-material perceptions of the past. By integrating Buddhist views and indigenous practices, this research investigates how local forms of archaeology evolved and contributed to understanding the past in these regions. This approach helps us better understand how local knowledge has influenced how we view the past in these both countries. The key question this study addresses is how were Buddhist conceptions influential in understanding the past. So my main objective of this study is to critically examine Buddhist ways of thinking about the past. So I explore how these ideas have shaped local archaeological thinking in both countries. This challenges conventional interpretations that have often overlooked these perspectives. By focusing on the Buddhist worldview, this study reveals how it has influenced the way archaeological knowledge and historical narratives have been constructed in these regions. My study is primarily based on literature, focusing on both ancient and modern literature. I examine ancient Buddhist literature, especially canonical texts, to understand Buddhist conceptions of the past. I also explore chronicles to see how these Buddhist perspectives influence thinking about the past in society. By comparing these two bodies of literature, I aim to trace the impact of Buddhist ideas on the development of local archaeological thought in India and Sri Lanka. Additionally, I review modern literature, particularly the historiography of archaeology, to explore how these non-material perspectives have been overlooked in the history of archaeology. Slide. Yes, when we look at South Asia, it's clear that colonialism greatly impacted archaeology, especially the countries that I'm talking about, India and Sri Lanka. From the 19th to the early 20th century, European antiquarians played a dominant role in archaeological explorations. Their discoveries were often presented as unearthing lost civilizations. So they reinforced a Eurocentric perspective that formed South Asia's past as something only the West could reveal and interpret. This way of thinking wasn't just about history, it also helped justify colonial rule. European scholars were considered experts, while local knowledge and traditions were pushed aside. Even after independence, many aspects of archaeology still reflect these colonial influences. This limit indigenous perspectives. Today's challenge is to rethink these narratives and bring local voices and knowledge systems into archaeological discourse. Next slide, please. When we look at South Asian archaeology, we can see how European travel accounts have been treated as the foundation of archaeological narratives. For example, if we take Chakrabarti's work, his work on Indian archaeology builds on these accounts, but at the same time, indigenous sources like Buddhist travelogues such as Fashian and Xuanzang's records haven't received much recognition. Even in Sri Lanka, we see a similar pattern. European antiquarian traditions were given more importance than local historical traditions. Something we can see in Godapumbura's work actually, his works on historiography of archaeology. So while these studies helped develop the field, they still carried a Eurocentric perspective. That's why I am concerning about this. No, the same slide, please. However, not everyone accepted this without question. For example, Valsingh Harishchandra, a Sinhala Buddhist nationalist, actively challenged these colonial narratives and pushed for a more indigenous understanding of the past. He spoke out against Western archaeological approaches and highlighted the importance of local traditions. He criticized the damage caused by British archaeologists to Buddhist sites, which he believed were sacred and part of a living religious tradition. Today, our challenge is to go beyond these inherited frameworks and bring local knowledge into archaeology, to make sure that diverse perspectives that were once sidelined are now a part of the conversation. Next slide. Now, let's return to Buddhist perspectives as non-material way of understanding the past. From this study, I identified 3 main ways of understanding the past in Buddhist texts, as you can see there. First, there is the epistemological framework, which is about how we gain knowledge of the past, and this is about the methods and sources we use to understand it. And Dr. Alok will talk to you more about Buddhist epistemology in this session. Then we have the temporal framework, which focuses on the order and timing of the past events. This focuses on when things happened and how they are connected through time. Lastly, we have the spatial framework, looks at the places and context where events occurred. This is understanding not just what happened, but where it happened and why the place is significant. Now let's look at each of these frameworks in more detail, one by one. Yes, the epistemological framework. In Buddhist texts, emphasizes the importance of personal experience and critical thinking. In Kalama Sutta, for example, the Buddha tells people not to accept things because they come from tradition or logic or reasoning and so on. Instead, he encourages everyone to check things themselves. That means know for yourselves. This shows that the Buddha believed in personal experience and understanding rather than blindly following teachings. This way of understanding the past also affects how it's recorded, as shown in the first Buddhist council at Rajagaha. Yes. During this council, teachings were kept safe through the direct knowledge and disciples like Venerable Ananda and Upali. The community ensured the teachings were accurate by reciting them together, that means Sangayana, verifying everything through their shared understanding. In Sri Lanka, we can see similar examples such as chronicles like Mahavansha. This Mahavansha validates sources by combining oral traditions and written records. If I recite one verse from Mahavansha to you, it says like this at the beginning. Poranehi katopeso ativittari takvachi ati takvati sanketto anetka punaruttako. That is how the author of Mahavansha validates the information from the previous sources. And also in Sri Lanka, we can see a commentarial tradition which is called Attakatha. Those works also checks the past by looking at important sources and carefully reviewing events. Also, sources like Saddharma Ratnavali, written in the 14th century CE, focus more on the meaning and wisdom of the past rather than just sticking to historical facts. Similarly, several other sources can be found from Sri Lankan context. Next slide. Yes. The next framework is the temporal framework. Buddhist texts present time as a cycle of massive periods. The concept of kappa or kalpa refers to vast cosmic time spans which are divided into types like Mahakappa, that means great eon, and Asankhya Kappa, that is incalculable eon, and there are many others as well. These cycles follow 4 stages: destruction, dissolution, evolution, and continuance, with the universe changing over the time. Buddhist stories like Jataka tales blend with history and myth, linking real places like Rajagaha to the Buddha's past lives. The Akanya Sutta also describes the Mahasammata lineage, which is the rise of kingship, showing how Buddhist texts connect them with the beginning of the human society. Next slide. In India, the Buddhist concept of time shapes our understanding of the past. The Nigliva Pila inscription of King Ashoka records that in the 14th year of his reign, he enlarged the stupa of Buddha Kanakamuni and later visited the site to worship and erect a stone pillar. This shows the continuity of time through cosmic cycle. And in Sri Lanka, the Mahameghavana Park, which is a garden donated by King Devanampiyathissa, is said to have been venerated during the time of the last 4 Buddhas. This connects Sri Lanka's religious landmarks to the Buddhist concepts of time, grounding them in cosmic cycles. These examples show how Buddhist ideas of time help us to understand the past in both India and Sri Lanka by linking local events to cosmic cycles. Next slide. Yes, Buddhism's idea of space starts with cosmology. The universe is seen with Mount Meru at the center, surrounded by different realms like celestial, human, and lower realms. Each realm has its unique qualities, showing how everything is connected. On a more earthly level, Buddhism also refers to sacred geography. This includes important places like where the Buddha was born, became enlightened, and attained Nibbana. So these places have deep spiritual and historical meanings. The Buddha's footprints, like those at Sri Pada in Sri Lanka and some other places as well, also mark these sacred spots. Monuments like stupa and relics add to this sacred geography, connecting physical places with spiritual significance. Next slide. Starting with the cosmological space, for example, the Ruwanveli Saya, which is one of the largest stupa in Sri Lanka, this is not just an impressive stupa, but also it has a very deep spiritual meaning, as it presents the cosmos and embodies the Buddha's relics, symbolizing the ongoing presence of Buddhism in the region. When we look at sacred geography, we can see the significant places tied directly to the Buddha's life. Locations like his birthplace and the site of his enlightenment are central to Buddhist sacred geography. These places formed a network of pilgrimage sites with accounts from pilgrims like Fashian and Xuanzang and inscriptions by King Ashoka guiding the way. Additionally, the concept of the Buddha's footprints plays a key role in making sacred spaces in Sri Lanka. Sites like Sri Pada and Abhayagiri Stupa are believed to be where the Buddha left his physical footprint. So this link these locations to the sacred and spiritual aspects. So, in conclusion, the Buddhist frameworks of knowledge, time, and space give us a fresh way to think about the past. Going going apart from the Eurocentric perspectives, especially in India and Sri Lanka. So these ideas challenge the more traditional material focuses viewed and show us how critically non-material ideas are in understanding the past. So that means these perspectives emphasize the non-material past, non-material conceptions of the past. And by bridging these perspectives together, we can develop a more inclusive and decolonized approach to the histories of local forms of archaeology. And also this will truly reflect the cultures and traditions of these regions. So lastly, I want to thank all of you, and especially for the organizing committee of this conference. And I hope you got something from my presentation, and I invite all of you to express your ideas and comments to me, because this is this research is actually the starting point of my ideas centered to Sri Lankan history of archaeology. So your comments will be valuable for me to further extend this research. Thank you very much.
Archaeological means not completely based on the archaeological sites. Actually, our paper is archaeological thoughts. That is the her paper, and also many things she discussed. Attakathas, you said commentaries, but we believe that Attakathas are like bhashyas, not commentaries, because we have commentary literature again. We have commentary literature again in Pali. Attakatha first, then commentary literature. That is why Tika literature is called commentary, but Attakathas are standing equal to bhashyas of Buddha Vachana. And Buddha, Sri Lankans say and believe that Buddha came to Sri Lanka, and that is why they say Buddha Pada is there in Abhayagiri Stupa. That is there, but according to Indian normal history, whatever they wrote, they never mentioned Buddha went to Sri Lanka, but it is a great concept that Buddha went there. And in Deepavamsa also it is described like that. The Buddha went through Akasha, and there are so many serpents, and there are so much descriptions there. That all shows the Buddha Bhakti, so the great reverence they have given to Buddha. So many things you have explained. Thank you very much. And now, Dr. Alok Verma, shall we call? Because the other person is Dr. Filip will present in the end. You are the Dr. Filip? Are you ready now? Okay. So, Dr. Alok Verma from Maharishi University of Information Technology, Noida, will present on Buddhist epistemology. Okay. And now, please come and present.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the organizers, basically Pranav sir, for giving the opportunity to be here. My paper's title is Buddhist Epistemology, Unveiling the Unique Ways of Knowledge, Knowing and Knowledge Creation inherent to Indian knowledge tradition. Because if we talk about the Indian knowledge tradition, without Buddhism, Indian knowledge tradition is not a complete. So that is why Buddhism is very important to know, to understand the Indian knowledge tradition. So basically, it is a key component of Indian knowledge tradition. Buddhist epistemology is a profound philosophical investigation into the nature and method of knowing acquisition. So I just mentioned because Buddhist epistemology is very important concern about the understand the Indian knowledge tradition, because if you talk about the Buddhist philosophy, it is very ancient. It is Buddha spread the message of peace, non-violence, other things all over the world. So it combines the metaphysical, ethical and practical elements to create a distinctive perspective on knowledge, formation and validation, all while remaining rooted in the larger framework of the Buddhist philosophy. So it shows the concept of Buddhist epistemology because it spread the message. So consequently, the study of knowing or epistemology has been a major focus of philosophical traditions. So in this paper, several schools of Indian philosophy, also including Nyaya, Mimamsa, Vedanta, and Buddhism, have produced the complex theories regarding the method and reality of knowing. Because if you talk about the Indian philosophy, there are a number of schools in Buddhism. It is also a very important part of IKS. So among these, Buddha epistemology is notable for its rigorous analysis and dedication to the real world application in the quest for nirvana, and freedom, because Buddha always talk about the nirvana, how to create a nirvana. So therefore Buddhist epistemology provides a comprehensive view of knowledge generation and its implication for the human existence by analyzing the integration between perception, pratyaksha, inference, anuman, and verbal communication. These three words are very important to understand the Buddhist epistemology. So in this way, the main focus of this my paper in Buddhist epistemology on the nature, sources, and boundaries of human knowledge, basically, especially as it's relate to attaining enlightenment or suffering relief, because Buddha always talk about the how to reduce suffering. Okay. So it has historically evolved via internal discussion among various Buddhist schools, as well as dialectical contact with other philosophical traditions such as Hinduism and Jainism, because Hinduism and Jainism is also the very important concern. So regarding this, many philosophers like Nagarjuna, who focused on the idea of impertinence, Shunyata, Dignaga, and Dharmakirti, who focused on the Buddhist logic and epistemology, and made important contribution to the Indian knowledge tradition. These three are very important figures of the spread the message of Buddhism in the whole world. So in order to determine truth and disapprove dogma, their writing examined the pramanas, means of valid knowledge, particularly perception, pratyaksha, and inference, anumana. These are very important fictions. So here are the early foundation Pali canon, because without Pali we cannot understand the Buddhist epistemology. So the fundamental texts of Theravada Buddhism and Pali canon offer important insight into early Buddhist conceptions of epistemology, or the acquisition, verification, and application of the knowledge, how to understand the Indian knowledge tradition. So Buddha emphasized basically the experience and knowledge, personal verification, rather than dependence on the doctrine, rumors, or conjecture to fundamental to this approach. Because Buddha always said, first of all, you understood self. After that, you give the message to the society. So several suttas that supported critical thinking, empirical research, and practical assessment of the truth represent this epistemological paradigm. One of the fundamental word of Buddhist epistemology, that is Kalama Sutta. Also, Madam said, this is in the Anguttara Nikaya. Buddha consulted the Kalama to examine and verify teaching via ethical result and personal experience, rather than accepting any teaching based solely on tradition, scripture, hierarchy, or other authority of teachers. So that Buddha always said, first of all, you learn personal, after that you understand all the things. So according to the Buddha, knowledge ought to be in the line with first-hand experience and advance both one's own and other people's well-being. This method emphasizes the fundamental epistemological tenets. Information is worldwide when it results in the relief from pain and encourage intelligent life. So it shows in this way Buddha addressed the drawbacks of depending just on tradition or scripture of the knowledge in the Kanaki Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya. Another important passage which I have mentioned here, he makes a distinction between belief, Shraddha, and knowledge, Jnana, implying that faith-based belief are not the same as experiential knowledge gained by first-hand observation and practices. This contrast supports the pragmatic and empirical foundations of Buddhist epistemology, which holds that knowledge must be put to the test by mindfulness, introspection, and focused practices. So here are Dignaga. Dignaga is also a very important figure in Buddhist epistemology. One of the key contributions to the evaluation of Buddhist logic and epistemology was Dignaga. His methodological articulation of a congruent framework for comprehending truth and knowledge and its way transformed the intellectual landscape of India. So one of the basic tests that synthesize and refine prior Buddhist epistemological ideas is the Pramana Sakya. This is the compendium of means of knowledge. So Dignaga rejected the other suggested forms of Indian knowledge as unnecessary and untrustworthy, and instead advocate into two main things: pramanas, perception, and inference. Only he rejected other third thing. So other very important figure of Buddhism is Dharmakirti. You all of you are aware about Dharmakirti. One of the most important Buddhist philosophers and logicians, Dharmakirti, was instrumental in the systemization and important improvement of Indian epistemology. His writing basically offer a complex framework for comprehending genuine cognition, pramana, and expand upon the fundamental principles of his ancestor Dignaga. So the contribution of Dharmakirti is basically seen through the examination of perception, pratyaksha, and inference, anumana, as the sole legitimate method of knowing, highlighting their different function in understanding the reality. So he elaborates on the epistemological requirements for legitimate cognition in his fundamental foundational work, Pramana Vartika, which ground perception in direct, non-conceptual apprehension and inference in the generality-based reasoning. So in addition to influence the Buddhist philosophy, his work also engaged and affected Indian philosophical traditions such as Nyaya Mimamsa. He fostering a discourse that enhanced the intellectual environment. So over the years, Dharmakirti's epistemological ideas have shaped the Buddhist and non-Buddhist traditions also, because other Hindu traditions also follow that tradition. So there are key concepts in the Buddhist epistemology which I have mentioned here. Pramanavada or Buddhist epistemology examines the nature, origin and boundaries of human knowledge with an emphasis on how to discriminate between error and true knowledge. Pramana. So there are two main forms of reliable knowledge: direct perception, pratyaksha, and inference, anumana, are at the heart of this philosophical system, that is the Buddhist epistemology basically. So in order to answer inquiries concerning reality, cognition, and the interaction between the observer and the observed, these techniques are technological examined. So thinkers like Dignaga, Dharmakirti, who developed the rigorous logical and epistemological system to assist Buddhist soteriological goals like conquering ignorance, avidya, and achieving enlightenment, are the major sources of inspiration for the tradition. So there are very important comparative analysis also I have mentioned in this paper. The rich and diverse heritage of Buddhist epistemology in India has developed through a number of schools of thought such as Vajrayana, Mahayana, and Theravada. These are the very important schools in Indian Buddhism. These schools have studied perception, inference, and the nature of reality in great details, which I have mentioned in my paper basically. So comparative analysis shows that later traditions such as Yoga Madhyamika synthesis emphasizes the role of consciousness and the concept of impermanence, where early Buddhist epistemology seen in the Theravada traditions focus on direct perception and logical reasoning as tools to understand the Four Noble Truths. So Buddhist epistemology was the further improved by the philosophers like Dignaga and Dharmakirti, who developed a methodological approach to pramana and they integrated it with historiological and ethical goals. So there are exchange ideas between Buddhism and non-Buddhist schools, produce a vibrant intellectual atmosphere that engage the Indian philosophy, shape the unique characteristics of Buddhist epistemology. Other very important practical implications of Buddhist philosophy. How to practical Buddhist philosophy? So basically, with ramifications that go well beyond philosophical discussion to the real world applications of human experience, Buddhist epistemology provides a deep insight into the nature of knowing, perception, and reality. So this epistemological framework basically has its root in the teaching of the Buddha and was developed by academics like Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, and Dharmakirti. They highlight the interdependence of reality and the cognition, the fallibility of the conceptual conceptions, and the transformational power of first-hand experience. Therefore, Buddhist epistemology is a framework for the developing knowledge, improving interpersonal relationship, and creating a more compassionate and peaceful society by combining the subtle understanding of true cognition with the technique of eradicating ignorance. So, next slide. So, the Buddhist epistemology provides a deep and distinctive viewpoints on the nature of knowledge and the method used to acquire, evaluate, and apply it. in the context to Western theories of knowledge that rely exclusively on empirical observation or logical inference, this Indian philosophical tradition places a strong emphasis on direct experience, critical reasoning, and meditation insight as main means of knowing. It offers a true framework for understanding the world, not only as a way to gain intellectual understanding, but also as a route of enlightenment and liberation by combining the ideas of pramana, yukti, and samyak drashti. Thank you so much.
He worked hard. You can see his face sweating. He worked very hard to prepare paper. So, Buddhists say that they are not accepting Shabda Pramana, but actually seeing they have accepted Shabda Pramana because they have, through Shabda Pramana only they are accepting all Buddha Vachanas. They did not see the Buddha. So whatever Buddha said is only said by Ananda, Mahakashyapa, all these disciples. Ultimately, yeah. And in Anguttara Nikaya, you have quoted Kalama Sutta, but you did not say clearly, but what Kalama taught Buddha. Yeah, but Kalama was the teacher of Buddha. Buddha has two teachers. One is Alara Kalama, other is Udraka Ramaputra. If you see the websites, they did not write clearly what Kalama taught Buddha. They say he taught some meditation. What meant meditation? Kalama was the great scholar of Sankhya philosophy. That Buddha, Ashwaghosha writes in Buddha Charitam very clearly. Kalama was the great scholar of Sankhya philosophy. And Kalama taught Buddha Sankhya philosophy. Even Udraka Ramaputra taught the Sankhya philosophy, and Buddha learned Sankhya philosophy. And then Kalama said that now, okay, you reached to the same level and you be teacher here. Then Buddha said, no, still I had to practice, and went to Bodh Gaya, and he got the enlightenment. And when he got the knowledge, he wanted to first tell to Kalama only. See, sir, I realized this, but by that time Kalama was no more. So what Kalama was taught is Sankhya. That is why Buddha Darshana is completely very similar to Sankhya. Sankhya starts with the suffering, Buddhism starts with the suffering. So this is very interesting. Sorry for taking this because it was very interesting for me. And now I request, thank you very much, Alok. I request now Dr. Filip to come and present. He is from University of Warsaw, Poland. He will speak on essential yoga principles in past and contemporary context. This is very interesting, again, yoga. Sankhya, I said, now he is yoga. Sankhya and yoga both are very related. That's what's said in Bhagavad Gita. Thank you, please come.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Upendra Raoji. And good afternoon, everyone. So my topic is, as was the essential yoga principle in past and contemporary context. And first I will give my backgrounds. I'm from Warsaw University, and this is I'm an Indologist and studied also in India and Sampurnananda Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya. And also my family background is allowed me to see the reception of Indian culture in Poland before in my young age, and also confronted after coming to India and see how it is contemporarily. And my first touch with yoga and with the Sanskrit literature was very early in early childhood from the sources, Sanskrit sources, because my father taught me Sanskrit when I was already 7 years old. So in this time, he wanted us. It was his ideal, his thought that we should reach Indian philosophy from the very sources, so from the textual sources. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because then there is some unique experience, we didn't have touch with living Indian culture at that time. So this is a very strange experience to be now confronted with Indian traditions, also living in tradition and also westernized. So very clearly I can see the differences which are those who are in the sources and those who are interpretations, especially Western thoughts which were not present in Poland at that time, and we had very limited reach to access to English literature at that time. So, and the basic thing that my father wanted to teach me was Yoga Sutra, because of his interest in Yoga Sutra. So the Yoga Shastra is written, based on Yoga Sutras, but then after going deeply into this basic text, then the whole literature opens and the whole tradition opens, which I was not aware of. So now I will come to how I could see the yoga, because there was no also division between Western or Eastern. There is no division, especially when a child sees and learns something. He thinks that it is normal, it is natural too, and it is true. So the method of yoga is based, it was mentioned about Chaturvyuha, so this four basic elements which were also accepted by Buddha and which came from Ayurveda, in fact, from Chikitsa Shastra. This is reaching the root, reaching the source or cause, the cause of, so Heya Hetu, Hana and Hanopaya. So Heya Hana and Heya Hanopaya. So because everything is based on the source. When the cause is found, only then the result or the afflictions can be removed. So this was a very rational approach. So finding the cause is also a philosophical investigation. So when we try to understand any phenomena, we are searching what is the cause of it. So this method was very rational. It is very appealing to find the certain cause. But in Indian tradition, in yoga, when they search the cause, they say that what is Harya, and now I will explain it gradually, and these are four. And so Heya is not its suffering. In yoga, not suffering, but the future suffering is to be removed. Heyam dukkham anagatam. And the hetu, what is the hetu of the roga, is aviveka. It's not it's undiscrimination and connection of Prakriti and Purusha in Sattva. Then the Hana is Hanopaya is the understanding the difference, like a Vekakyati, which consists on differentiation between Sattva and Purusha, because Sattva is the subtlest form of Prakriti. But when you see Hanopaya and all these methods in different traditions, where the difference between traditions were not based on these four, but on how they understood the cause, how they understood the method. For instance, the method of Buddhism is quite different than in Patanjala Yoga Shastra, because here the upaya is Ashtanga. In fact, Ashtanga Yoga and different upayas are also given here. But what I want to say here, that dukkha is one of the elements which experiences which are correlated with obstacles or afflictions. Not afflictions, kleshas are afflictions, like antarayas. And they are vikshipta. There are sahabhava or vikshepa sahabhava. So vikshepa sahabhava, they are at the same time when there is a vikshepa, so the chitta is vikshipta, then we have the suffering. So that's why yoga focuses on nirodha. And the definition of yoga shastra, yoga and yoga shastra is yoga chitta vritti nirodha, to become antarmukhi. Just to learn how to withdraw from the senses and how to conquer one's own mind. So this is antarmukhi bhava, chitta nirodha, chitta vritti nirodha, and this is the method, in fact, so that after this the yoga occurs. So yoga occurs spontaneously and naturally after withdrawing the mind. So, this you can say that Patanjala Yoga Shastra is the yoga of chitta. It is yoga of withdrawing the mind. And then the natural viveka khyati comes as an outcome. So this hana and kaivalya starts. But when we look into the sources of other sources like Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana, there is a beautiful definition of yoga, very beautiful explanation, which is yoga. That there are two kinds. Like one is jnana, so atma jnana, and the other is prana samrodha. And Vasishtha Muni says that both are the same, but for jnana, for the first type of yoga, we usually say it jnana. So it is like a Sankhya yoga, Prithapala, Pravadantya Pandita. So Sankhya, so under the Viveka Khyati. And the other is Prana Samrodha. So the prana is understood also very nice, that in fact chitta, when chitta vritti, we say about chitta vritti nirodha, it is not chitta nirodha, but chitta vritti nirodha. It is also about sukshma prana. So in Yoga Shastra, we have there is like the jnana and yoga of prana samrodha and atma jnana, and in fact understood as the same. So the whole text of Yoga Shastra says that prana, when we conquer prana, when we withdraw, when we prana, then also the mind is withdrawn. At the same time, when we conquer mind, then the prana also stops. But the stopping of mind is something not like stopping the mind. This is something different. This is how one should experience this. This is like, there is a beautiful second definition of tada vritti sarupyam itaratra. Yes, and then vritti sarupyam itaratra. Two kinds of yoga are mentioned in Patanjali. One is asampragnata yoga and another is sampragnata yoga. So sampragnata yoga is when the seer becomes, or the subject becomes one with vritti. It becomes one with vritti when because this, like you can imagine, running along the running train. So when you run exactly as it is, then stops, everything stops. When we are completely in the vritti, then our mind also stops, and the whole vritti are visible. Because vritti, the movement of prana, is not possible to grasp, because it is in time. There is a sequence of time. How to grasp prana? How to grasp this? You have to follow it. And then when one follows the breath, then it is like the mind stops, only by following. So it is not and finding the points when the breath comes up and it comes down. There is one tiny moment of stopping of the breath and stopping of the mind. So there are like a pauses, natural pauses in the consciousness which are beyond the time. So this it is a very subtle thing to understand through experience, but understanding the two, the chitta and the prana. I just noted the nice definition of prana and chitta. So dehesmin dehanadishu vatah spurati yobhitaha spandeshviva bhuvo vari saprana iti kirtita. So in this body, it is like this wind, as if wind, who is everywhere in the body, in the vibration, in the spanda, in the vibration, in the pulsation or vibration of the water. This is prana. And antah prana parispandat sankalpa kalpanot sukhi samvit sanjayate yaisha tachittam vidhiraghava. So when in this this spanda, this pulsation, which is vibration of prana, in antah prana, so the inner prana, there are two kinds, sukshma prana and sthula prana. So it's sukshma prana, when it creates chitta. So that's why in the Yoga Shastra we say nirmana chittani. This is possible because chitta is something which is created. So our individual consciousness, so this chitta vritti, chitta is created by the prana. So this is this philosophical approach to yoga, this textual study of yoga gives another approaches, just understanding something which is not easily grasped by seeing into English translation, like fluctuation of mind. Somebody translates this, or somebody these phenomena of mind. There is also translated one Polish scholar in Polish language. In this, he translated like this. But in fact, finding these definitions in the other texts of yoga, like Yoga Vasishtha and others, plenty of books and plenty of teachers' traditions who are based in this not westernized tradition, find new solution and new clear understanding. Like the vritti, I just was thinking about the vritti. The vritti is so well named, this name vritti, because it is something which comes, and there are different levels. It is another topic, the different levels of vritti, up to sanskara and karma and sanskara chakra. This is also a vritti, because in memory, when you come to the memory, smriti, then this vritti comes to, this is karma and sanskara chakra. It is also vritti. Vritti is something which reappears again and again. So for instance, Nidra also is a vritti because it comes back and reappears and comes again, and then we have the waking state. So all these pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra. So pramana, sometimes we know, sometimes we don't know. So this is something that this is the whole the field of consciousness that we are experiencing, which is divided into 5 vrittis, 5 functioning, in fact, of prana, inner prana. And thus controlling this prana, controlling this subtle prana, is in fact yoga. Prana samrodha, it is controlling this inner prana, and by that we also control our mind. So this is a great contribution of Indian thought, of Indian traditions, to something which is universally applicable. This is not only, you cannot say that it is only like limited to any one. In tradition, it flourishes. It is like house. Somebody comes from some house, from some home. This is he was nourished here, and then he became then the mature. There is a mature thought, mature philosophy that developed in India, in Indian schools of philosophy and yogic practices, that becomes universally applicable. So this is a great achievement, and it was accepted, and this is not much time, but it is quite important to say and to tell about this, that it was accepted according to the ability of individual ability and of social ability of different countries. Sometimes many elements could not be accepted. For instance, so many people don't say about yamas and niyamas, which is the crucial, because otherwise the antaraya would come. And so many people, so a few people speak about Ishvara Pranidhana. There is no Ishvara. Why? But Ishvara is so important because Ishvara is not only Pratyak Chetanadhigama, so this inner movement automatically comes, but also Antaraya Abhava. So Antaraya, everybody wants the removal of suffering. And this suffering is the main starting point of all Indian philosophies, and starting point of trying of this research, or the search into the means how to dukkhatraya bhigata jinyasa tadabhigata keheta drishte sapartha chedna ekanta tyanta to bhava. This is always valid. So it is never, whatever means we find, whatever solutions we find, for instance, for treating cancer, for treating different problems, social problems, it is enough. We should always investigate. And the yoga gives the method of purification of the mind, and then as if after some practices, practical applications of withdrawal, antarmukhi bhava, what is self-evident, what is easily, then after purification of mind, it comes in a clear form. So we can find not by guessing and doing suppositions, then trying to verify it, but only by peaceful meditation, peaceful state of mind, and withdrawal of mind, like in Bhagavad Gita, then the knowledge comes automatically, even when we ask questions and then come into meditation, even if we focus on special crucial point, and then it comes by itself. So these things should be researched. I think that the new approach should be there, more practical and more applicable and closer to Indian living traditions, Indian yogis who are doing this, trying to study text and at the same time learn from the parampara. And this is with this I finish. I want to thank you thank you to the University, to JNU University for this invitation, and thank you, Professor Upendra.
Like these same interpretations. You see, whatever you said, vikshipta sahabuvaha, vrittayaha or antaraya. Yeah. What are the vikshepa sahabuvas?
These are
Sufferings.
What accompany the chitta vikshepas.
Yeah.
Chitta
Vikshepas, that's what. Yeah.
Suffering, like dukkha, vyadhis,
Yeah, all these sufferings. So the same thing Buddha also says. That's what I was saying. Same interpretation. Very interesting, and thank you very much. We don't have much time to, unfortunately, to discuss these things. Later we can discuss. And now, because I have next session, I have to go. I have my own presentation. Yeah, I have a speaker. Yeah, please let us follow. You. Yeah, please.
Now I invite Professor Upendra Rao to kindly distribute the certificates to all the speakers.
Call names. First speaker, Renate, this time.
Renate,
Sorry.
Professor Renate Syed.
Otherwise, all of you can come and I give one by one. Please come, all of you.
Professor Sonia Suchday, then Professor KVJ Koshali,
Please come.
then Professor Alok Verma, and then Professor Filip Rucinski. साक्षी इसको बंद कर दो.
Yes, ma'am.
Professor Sonia Suchday.
Sonia.
Now Professor KVJ Koshali. Now Professor Alok Verma. Now Professor Filip Rucinski.